My name is Daria D'Andrea, and I am Northern California Viola Society president. And I'm very, very excited to present today our 5 YVC finalists. They are the Young Violists Competition finalists that we hold each year in March. And our finalists come from a number of towns in the Bay Area. And we're just really excited to see them in action as teachers, because we've seen them a few weeks ago in action as competitors and heard their wonderful music making. So I've put them in order, a little bit of order that's sort of warm up to repertoire, but we will go ahead and start first with Hannah Lam, who is a student of Pei-Ling Lin, and she is going to talk about some fingerings with chromatics and a way that she uses Schradik.
Hello, I'm Hannah, and today I will be talking about what you should do when you don't get the progress you're looking for despite plenty of practice. So I experienced this just a couple weeks ago, but I started this new piece, and it's written in the classical period, and it's in the prestissimo tempo, which is just a bit faster than presto. The first couple of weeks when I started on the piece, I was making pretty good progress. But afterwards, it kind of seemed like I was regressing. So that was a bit concerning. I consulted my teacher, and she told me to either go really fast or really slow, since this is a classical piece and it does need a lot of energy with the character. So I'm guessing that everyone has struggled with just having trouble with fast passages. Is there anyone who hasn't? And if you could raise your hand, that would be very nice. I can't quite see the hands because my screen is not on full, but I will take that as not many people. So the basic step that I usually start out with when I struggle with a passage is to just deconstruct it, take it very slow, take out all the rhythm and just play one note per bow. And I find that this helps hopefully start out with trying to see what is the problem. And it kind of helps you form a story for that piece, especially if you're in the beginning of practicing it or starting it. And I always make sure to practice with intention, because I find that if you start in the beginning of a piece and you figure out all your characters and different ways you want to play out certain things, it really helps create a story over time, and it solidifies that in your playing. And a short example I have is this half step exercise, I like to call. So you would play this on all 4 strings, and there's 4 exercises. So the half step would be in between the 2nd and 3rd finger. Then you would go to the 3rd and 4th, and then the 1st and 2nd, and then the open string and your 1st finger. I like to first start off playing slow, and just to establish what the intonation or what the correct pitches for each note are, so that later on when I speed up, I'm able to kind of figure out what notes are in tune and what are not. tempo for all 4 patterns and do that on all 4 strings. And once I have done that, I gradually speed up so that later on I'm able to get to a tempo where I can do a very clean run. And I would usually do that around 4 times, so up and down 4 times on each pattern. So. And then I would go to the next pattern. Would anyone like to try this?
Yes. Are you going to do it with us?
Oh, I can. Should I do it in a faster tempo, or is that okay?
That would be fun.
And I would usually do this slurred, so so after I speed up for a period of time and I get to a nice and smooth run, I usually feel pretty tired, and I've noticed that it's easiest to start on the highest notes because sometimes if you start on the C string, your arm kind of just gets used to playing at that angle. So then I don't know, it just feels more tiring for me. And then the second exercise I have is Stradiac number 5. And this is another exercise that my teacher introduced to me to help with more finger patterns. And so I also just go through the motions of playing it slowly and speeding it up. And I also make sure that right here on the 4th finger on the A, I kind of do a small, like I just like accent my finger, I guess, to know where I am in the exercise. into a faster tempo so I could play each measure on one bow. So just a reminder to always play around with the passages that you struggle with or just any given passage, and always make it a fun challenge, just like changing the up bows to down bows, or you could try out playing different characters. And my teacher just recently introduced this to me where you take a passage and you think of any actor or TV character that you like, and you try to interpret them and do an interpretation on that passage when you play. And it's quite challenging because sometimes there are characters where they're they can't make up their mind, so you have to kind of put that into your playing and show the very drastic change. And also it helps to keep things fresh, and so when you're playing, you never go into autopilot.
Hannah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On your screen share there's a comment that says internal finger flow. Could you talk about that a little bit? I'm really curious.
Okay. So basically, if I remember correctly, it's just to make sure that your fingers keep flowing, and also personally to know that you have there's a direction to the exercise, and it's not just placing each note down. Because sometimes I do just place each note down and I don't have that kind of direction and momentum towards the next note. So that's just a reminder to just keep everything flowing.
Is that like within the pulse of the music or within the hand internal finger?
Both. I think it's mainly towards the music and the pulse of it, but it does also go towards how I move my hand and like, yeah.
Great.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I love the suggestion about taking out the rhythm and taking out the bowing, or maybe reversing your bowing. Those are really great suggestions. Do you want to show any of the passage that you're working with, or did you just want to do the Shradik?
I actually don't have that with me right now.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll put you on the spot. But that was terrific, and I really enjoyed the thing about the character too. That was great. Yeah, bravo.
Thank you.
Great. I think we should probably keep moving. So Michelle is going to tell us a little bit about how she works on intonation with Bach, which is a really interesting idea. And Michelle's also a student of Pei-Ling Lim.
Okay, hello, my name is Michelle Koo, and yeah, so as Miss Dondrea said, I'm going to talk about my intonation, how I work on my intonation in Bach. And I don't know about everyone else, but it's like the most time consuming and difficult aspect for me when I'm like practicing or learning a new movement of Bach. Partly because I wasn't really born with like a sense of intonation, so it took me a really long time to like actually like train my ears and like hear whether something's out of tune or like out of context. So it's also something, intonation is also something I can't like skip over in Bach, because like having good intonation also like transforms how it sounds. So it's like the difference between before cleaning up and like after cleaning up the intonation, it's like sounds more like clean and vibrant. So that's why I always do it when I work on a new Bach movement. And yeah, so about how I practice my intonation, I use it after I finish like learning the notes, because like if I do it while learning the notes, it's a bit too much for me. So I'll be reading off the Prelude of Cello Suite number 2. Let me share my screen. Give me one moment. Is that visible?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna talk through the steps I take, but before I talk through it, I'm gonna mention that it takes a long time. There's a lot of like things you also have to keep in mind while doing it, but like once you actually do it, I find that it like stays with me for like the longest time. It's like pretty effective for me. And so make sure before you like play that you don't press down too hard, because then you can't really hear the notes, and don't vibrato either, because that's not going to help. And I don't usually focus on the rhythm when I do this, because I want to hear the notes, and make sure to go very slowly. Okay, so I'm going to go through the first measure. And okay, so for like the first measure, I take the first note, which is the D, and since I know it's in tune because I tune my strings, what I do is like I practice my intonation and like fix it by listening to the notes before, so that they're in context with each other. And so the first thing I do is I play the first note, and then I build to the second one. So it like gives me a general outline of where the note is, and then so the main goal is to actually like hit the note like exactly. So then I practice just going back and forth between the notes like several times until I feel like I can actually hit the note when I play. So I just go. And then when I can't find the note, so it's like I also have to look for the note. So I listen for a sound that like makes the right side and the left side of my head like ring. So I don't know if any of you have felt that, but I'm always looking for that sound, because it's like I found that it's the most in tune when I feel that ring in my head. So that's what I'm looking for whenever I like go back and forth. And you can follow along if you want. Find the note like when you're playing, I find that if you just keep on looking for the note, it's just gonna like make me go more out of tune. So what I recommend is just like put everything down, take like a 5-second break so you like take everything off your mind, and then play the D again so you hear the reference note, and then start playing the F, so with like a clean head. So I do that for like every interval between the notes. So for the next 2 notes, I go. pretty easy to find the resonance because there's a string that you can check with. So. And so I repeat this until I reach the end of the bar, so it would be. And then once I reach the end of the bar, I play the entire bar again 3 times. So I like let it sink in before moving on. So yeah, 3 times. And so I do this like bar by bar, and when I start the next bar, I always remember to like start off from the last note of the previous bar because I still need a reference. So that when I put everything together, it doesn't sound like out of place or like a jigsaw puzzle that hasn't been put together properly. And once I reach the end of a phrase, I go back to the beginning of the phrase and I play through into the entire phrase again. Yeah. And so there's a reason why it takes a really long time because I go through every single one. So I usually like dedicate an entire week for me to just practice my intonation. And yeah, that's how it works for me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Yay. But that's inspiring. A whole week on intonation alone. That's very impressive. When you're working this intensely, do you ever sing? Do you?
Yeah, it actually helps a lot when I sing because I don't know why, but I sing in tune, but I can't play in tune as much. So I usually like sing before I play sometimes when it gets like really difficult for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you were going to be, working on something in D minor, would you like play some D minor scales or something before, so it's kind of in your head?
Yeah, that does help, but I'm not too fond of scale, so I don't do that too much.
That's honest. Yeah. But
Yeah.
singing, that's interesting too. So if you sing it, it kind of establishes it inside your head a little more. There was something that in our last session that Molly Carr, who was talking about the Dunas, said about intonation, I thought was really interesting. She was saying there's certain notes are non-negotiable, like your open D and your A, non-negotiable, right? But then to exaggerate the, I think she said when it's a sharp, it's meant to be high. So if you have run across an accidental, you're going to exaggerate it high, and if you run across a flat as an accidental, you exaggerate it low because the composer is telling you something with the spelling of those notes. And I think too with the minor third, you're gonna want to kind of exaggerate that being low too. Does that make any sense for you, or what do you think?
Well, I guess for sharps, I have to exaggerate because I tend to play things flat, and like for flat, I have to like exaggerate less. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I think using your inner ear and hearing is a really great way to go. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have questions for Michelle? And I think we're going to go on. And Wyeth is going to talk about double stops and Walton concerto.
So, Wyeth, would you mind sharing with everybody about the program that you're coaching with?
Oh, yeah. Um, I'm just doing a program. I think it's just within my the small chamber orchestra that I'm in right now. It's just a program where uh we donated some instruments to this youth sinfonietta in Accra, Ghana, and we're giving out free lessons. And I started a few months ago. It was actually basically my first time teaching. Uh, but it's been pretty fun actually. The person that I'm coaching is actually older than me. He's 20 years old and in college. So, but it's just interesting, just hearing about the differences in cultures and just spreading the music, I guess. All right. I'm Wyeth, and I'm gonna be talking about double stops and exercise, or yeah, practice tips, and ways that I think about them, hopefully to make them easier. Uh, the passage that I'm gonna be sharing is a passage from the Walton Viola Concerto, and I realized that I've been running into a lot of double stops recently in this piece and in other pieces. Yeah. So the first strategy, actual practice strategy that I'd recommend is definitely isolating the chords. What I mean by that is playing the bottom, like isolating just the bottom or just the top, and while still like fingering the others the other voice, you play the notes, and I think this can help a lot because especially for the bass line, because in general the top line is comes out more because well it's higher, and the bass line is really where I feel the core of the double stops. So this passage, it goes, I'm just gonna play it normally. It goes like, so in order to isolate this, since there are many shifting notes within each double stop, I would just play. It might sound weird if you're used to playing a passage, but you play it like. All right. Yeah. So you definitely still wanna finger the top because you don't want to completely lose the shape of your hand. Uh, so this passage is a little tricky, but if anybody wants to try, then uh, yeah, I'll do that one more time. Uh, so you'd isolate just the bottom, but also keep fingering the top line. I hope the fingerings I put in help a bit. And after isolate the bottom part, uh, you would move on to the top part. So uh, I'll just demonstrate that, and anybody wants to join in on mute, then that's fine. And yeah, so essentially what I would do is you do that, and then you would put those together, and I think that helps a lot with, at least for me, it helps a lot with the general intonation of the passage. Um, Another thing that I think is very vital in playing double stops is the actual shape of the hand, and I'll probably be focusing on like three parts, which are the wrist, the thumb, and the fingers. So with the wrist, uh, you kind of want to have it. All of these you kind of want, or at least for the wrist and the thumb, you kind of want to have it in this Goldilocks zone, somewhere in the middle where it works fine. So if I play it like if for my wrist, if I play with my wrist like really close to the scroll, it it becomes an effort to stretch my fingers out and actually reach the note. And if I play it too close to the actual neck of the instrument, it's an effort to not contort my hand in order to hit the notes. So I think there's this kind of golden point in the middle where where everything well just works out, somewhere in the middle between of those two. Just like that. All right, and next would probably be the thumb, and the thumb also it lands somewhere in the middle. So you don't want to have it too close to the scroll because again it causes some weird contortions in the hand. And you don't want to play it too close to the body of the instrument. So the place that I would recommend always keeping your hand in on double stops, and kind of just in general actually, is kind of around a little bit below the first finger. So for me, it's around here. So I can play it like. Okay, and for the fingers, I think it's just I think it's just a lot in the fingering that you decide for the double stops. You want to get a fingering that will make it easy to shift without like contorting or without like twisting your hand. Because sometimes I find when I'm exploring a new passage that's similar or that has double stops, and I'm kind of ad-libbing the fingerings, my hand gets a little bit twisted, which can just cause the passage to just be much harder in general. So you want to be on the lookout for fingerings. I guess this applies to everything. That just makes the passage easier. One more thing about the fingers is that although this applies to everywhere, it applies especially to double stops. You don't want to press your fingers too hard on the fingerboard, because that just makes your entire hand stiff. And I find that I do that sometimes because you're so focused on the actual note side of the double stops that I kind of lose track of other things. So having the fingers too clamped on the fingerboard just makes life harder for you. The shifts are harder, and the sound just sounds like pressed. So if I play it like with my fingers as hard as I can put it on the fingerboard, it just sounds. and so I would recommend having your fingers at a point where they can kind of just glide on the string. So if anyone wants to play, they would kind of just glide on the string, but not so light that you're playing a harmonic or something. So. Okay. One thing that I think about in order to remember to have the fingers lighter on the fingerboard is what works for me is I just think about the shifts. I just basically just think about the shifts because the shifts are so much easier with the fingers more lightly pressed on the fingerboard. If I just think of the shifts and focus on those, it helps a lot for me in lightening my fingers.
You had an interesting thing you were talking about earlier with vibrato on double stops.
Oh yeah, yeah. So for vibrato on double stops, I would recommend, because it can get really difficult if you're trying to like focus your vibrato onto both of your fingers at once, because well, it's like 2 times the amount of effort. One thing I would recommend is simply vibrating the top or the bottom note, just one of the two. Because usually I do the bottom note, because usually your hand will follow suit, and just thinking about it that way, at least for me, makes it much less complicated in general. So we can just play that. It's also easier to keep the vibrato going between shifts, because even if your hand like changes shape, you don't have to reset your vibrato. You can kind of just keep it spinning. Yeah, that's
Nice. Thank you, Wyeth. That's awesome. Do you have anything that you think about with your right arm when you're practicing double stops, or does that just come naturally?
When I'm practicing double stops, I think the main thing is to just don't forget about your right arm. Because well, every passage is different, so I can't tell like say a certain thing to do on all passages. But just make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with your right arm. Don't just abandon all thought for it in exchange for getting good intonation, because yeah, the perfect intonation isn't everything.
Right, right. And sometimes with double stops, we find we're pressing with the bow
Yeah.
or the fingers, one or the other. Great. Thank you so much. Awesome. Great. And next we're going to look at a Wieniawski caprice with Pearl. And I forgot to say that Wyeth is a student of Jessica Chang, and Pearl next up is Dmitry Murath's student.
Hi everyone, my name is Pearl. Today I'm going to be talking about how I practice fast passages, and I'm going to be demonstrating using an excerpt from Wieniawski Caprice number 4. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, so that's just the fingering I like to use. If something else works for you, you can try with a different fingering. So I'm just going to play it for you, and then I'll go through 3 different aspects of practicing it. So that's the chromatic scale. And so what I do when I want to play something faster, first I go very slowly, I watch for intonation, and then I isolate the shifts because shifting can be tricky in fast passages. So first, let's go really slow. Let's try isolating the shifts. So the first shift is here. So what I'll do is I'll go really slowly over the shift. And make sure I'm not pressing my finger too hard. Because if I press my finger, then I won't be able to, I'll get stuck. So the next shift is between F and F sharp. So and I'll probably do the shift about 10 times just to like get it pretty solid, and then I'll try it I'll try the whole passage again slowly. But then the next step I do is to use a metronome to help me speed things up a little, like step by step. So I probably start at like 40 to the quarter note. So I'll go up like maybe five numbers each time. And then probably until I get to like about 80. Is that like too fast right now, or should I go over more speeds? Okay. Okay, and so that's step 2, I use metronome. And then step 3, I use rhythms because that helps me speed it up like a lot. The reason they're helpful is because you're putting 2 notes together really fast with a pause in between, and it lets your brain like take a break in between the notes, but it also trains your fingers to play fast. So the first rhythm I do is this. And then the second one is going short long. And when you're doing the rhythms, you want to make sure the short note is faster than you're actually going to be doing in the tempo, so that you can, like, so you're training your fingers to go faster than you actually have to. That way you can, when you put it together, you can speed it up. So, yeah, so then after I do all those 3 steps, I try it I try it faster. And so that's how I do it. It takes a lot more than like 10 minutes to really like get a passage like that, but hopefully these steps can help you next time you're going through like a fast passage or something challenging, because these help me like every time I have something like that. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yes, wonderful, Pearl. Those are great suggestions. Do you use the metronome when you're doing the rhythms at all?
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I find rhythms super helpful too. And what about bow? Do you change your bowing or do any variations with bow when you're trying to learn something fast?
Yeah, sometimes I find if I do slurs, if it's like something separate, if I can do like slurs, or if it's something slurred, I can separate it. That way it's sort of, making it harder so that when I have it the way it's written, it's a little easier, I guess. So like I could go like, just to like, I don't know, sort of trick my brain, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Anybody have questions for Pearl? Speak up. And otherwise, we are moving on to Ingrid. Thank you so much, Pearl. Great.
Hi guys. Today I'd like to talk first a bit about posture. So I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but when I was little, I had a huge problem with slouching. So all my teachers would tell me to like have a straighter back, and then I overcorrected. So it became like an ingrained habit to kind of lean back like this when I play. And it's really hard, I guess, like either way, if you're slouching or if you're leaning back, to know that your posture isn't perfectly straight because you're just used to it so much. So I had a lesson with Dimitri a couple months ago, and he said something that really helped me, and it was to think of the middle of my hips being where my legs come from instead of my back. So kind of thinking of your center of gravity kind of as being a little bit more forward instead of being at the most posterior point of your back. So if everyone would like to stand up and kind of without your instruments, try standing with your 2 feet straight on the ground, right below the hip joints, and just have your shoulders relaxed and try to find a place where you're really solid on the ground. So you can, if you stand sideways like this, you can see on the Zoom screen if you're leaning backwards or if you're kind of a little hunched over. So I think it's really helpful to practice in the mirror without the viola and just get a really good grip on the posture. So everyone looks great. And then if you could pick up your violas and hold them up, and just you don't have to play anything. Just put your viola up to your shoulder and then start walking backwards and see how balanced you feel. Does anyone have any input so far? Any comments you'd like to make? Or what do you feel?
Yeah, Dimitri actually was telling me that also, and I found it very helpful because when I play, sometimes I would feel off balance. But then now I've been sort of like checking myself every now and then by walking backwards, and it fixes it for me. So that's really helpful.
That's exactly how I felt, Pearl. I think just walking backwards is such a simple thing to do, and it doesn't even seem like it would be so transformative at first, but it is so helpful. And something you could also do is just play a C major scale maybe, and walk backwards as you play. So right, I think I came off this screen, but if you all would like to try that maybe for a couple seconds, that would be great. Great. So does anyone have any comments on if that felt different from just walking with your viola on your shoulder, or did it feel a little bit better balance? Or?
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. I've never thought of it like that before. It was
Right.
fun to walk backwards too, try to play.
Right. And even, oh, I know everyone is working on different pieces, so I don't think I can play one piece that everyone knows super well. But just when you're practicing, it's so helpful to walk backwards with a piece you really know, because you don't have to think about getting the right notes or whether your bow is in the right spot. You can just focus on if your posture is really exact. And something else Dimitri said to me was that it should kind of feel like you're hunching over if you have the problem of leaning backwards, because when you're leaning backwards, if it feels normal to you, then when you're in the right posture, it would feel a little bit the other way, so it would feel like you're hunching over. I don't know if any of you have had that experience. So I'd also like to show you maybe with the first couple notes of the second Bach prelude. I'll share my screen so everyone can see. Or actually I can, yeah, I'll share my screen. So here's the prelude, and this is kind of separate from the posture thing. So I guess I have two things to share today. But with this piece, when after you kind of walk backwards with the notes, something else that's really good to do is kind of separate each note into the components. So something like this. Right, so I think it's a little bit like posture for your musicality, because it really helps get everything really into the pulse, which is pretty important, especially in Bach. So if you guys would like to try the first line of this piece, just subdividing everything. Okay, great. I think, it's another pretty simple little practice idea, but really helped me a lot when I was working on this piece. And then I think another thing, my last little comment is that when you guys were, or when we were working on the subdivision just now, I think it might have been a bit hard to keep the same amount of focus on posture as we did on the notes, because we were working on something else. So I just think it's, or for me especially, it was really important to continue being vigilant about my posture, because it's so easy to slip back into doing what's comfortable, what's normal for you. But it's, I think, being uncomfortable, or maybe uncomfortable isn't the right word. Maybe going out of your comfort zone with posture is really important, because having a good body position is also important for good health in the many years to come. So that was what I wanted to share today. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer.
Is that like separate bows for like feeling the pulse?
Right. That's a really big part of it. And it's also just to keep a direction going throughout the piece, because sometimes I know definitely for me personally, if sometimes I just, kind of get bogged down by all the notes, or, the long notes kind of make me want to play slower, and then it just falls apart sometimes. So it's really helpful to keep the rhythm alive.
Can I share one thing?
Sure.
One thing I found that really helps when I want to like find my pulse is if I would like walk to the music, like, and then each beat is like a step, because then you're feeling the bigger beats, and you could sort of fit the smaller notes into that beat and like have freedom, but still have a pulse going. I don't know if that would be helpful, but that's what I use a lot.
That sounds really helpful. I will definitely do that the next time I practice. So thank you.
You could even do it going backwards.
Yeah, walk backwards. When you're thinking of the pulse, are you thinking of the increasing of certain notes, like the longer notes, like them increasing or decreasing? When you're thinking of the inner, like if you have a dotted eighth note, like there's maybe 3 little pulses there, 16 notes, whether they go big or small. So I've always thought of them like the inner pulse is almost like I visualize a string of pearls, and then so one is bigger and then it gets smaller and smaller, or vice versa. It starts out small and it starts to increase.
I think that's really interesting. I usually think of it, I'm more of an auditory person, so that imagery is super useful. It's a different perspective. So thank you for that.
Sure. Okay. That was fabulous. Thank you to Ingrid. And thank you to everybody, all of our young teachers here today. It was really, really, really wonderful. Are there, from the people listening, if you have a comment or a question, that now would be a great time. But we're nearly out of time, so we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. Thank you to everybody.